And Haynes, welcome to the Process podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Just feel like just getting 2024 rolling now that I'm finding a routine. I think you and I have been on the road for the end of 2023 and the start of 2024. Or really the last 4 weeks, kind of, I guess, of 2023. And now only just trying to find my rhythm again and routines and all that sort of stuff. Training, work, social life, recovery, fill in the blank, food, sleep, all that. But excited for a big year ahead.
Yeah, we have been traveling a lot. Very cool. I think I'm very grateful to be able to do that with work. And I think when I haven't traveled with work, I get my first travel and I'm really, really excited. And then I think now, having done a lot of it, I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm very happy to not be traveling for a while.
Yeah.
So what we've done, we've had the Bangkok Throwdown, which I was able to go down just for a weekend and support our athletes there. Then came back. Then we had Dubai a couple of weeks later, where you competed. We ran some engagement stuff with our community, loads of networking. Then we came back. Then we had a 2-week holiday in Phuket.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Mr. Twazon took over the podcast. Thank you, Chris. Love you. Crushed it. Thank you very much, buddy. And then we went straight from Thailand, basically to the Philippines, where we spent 4 days in Manila working with our 2 new affiliates, CrossFit Ethos and All Out Fitness. That was very cool. First time really like spending quality time with the gym owners and the coaches, and actually being able to see and be in their facilities and see how they're running classes and delivering the LPC program. And yeah, that was really, really cool. And then from there, we flew to Cebu, which is an island in Philippines. I'm going to say small, but it's not a small island. An island in Philippines, about an hour away. And we were there to connect with one of our affiliates, Cebu, Subterro, and all the guys and girls involved with that gym, coaches and owners. Had a great time hanging out with those guys. But the main objective was to basically be there for the Cebu Throwdown, which is an annual competition. It's their second year of doing it now. And we had the honor of being asked to write the workouts, so do the programming for the competition. And, they also helped bring us down there for the actual event itself, where we didn't have too much to do on the actual weekend itself, but we actually got there to witness it, experience it, help out a little bit, and, just bond with all the competitors, volunteers, organizers, and of course, like the athletes. Did I say that already? Competitors, athletes, yeah. The athletes that were there. So pretty damn cool experience. And then we came back to Hong Kong. And then we had 4 days before the 2024 Process Program Athlete Camp, which was the biggest and best yet. Another podcast on that very, very soon. So it's just been a lot of big events as well as the traveling. For sure, you look like you're thriving. Not gonna lie, I'm seeing you on the training floor right now, and you look bloody fine, and you're crushing it. I'm far from crushing it right now.
Well, I think I've come through what was like a harder part for me.
You got sick, yeah.
I got sick, and then
in Cebu.
Well, I was also like kind of injured moving into Dubai, and then needed to relax in Phuket, and then got sick in Cebu, and then as I got back to Hong Kong, then like you had a little bit of a sickness, and like your body's a bit screwed up now and a bit inflamed, and then Twazon is
down and out with pneumonia now,
in and out of hospital with every disease known to man, and then
nothing's actual, by the way,
and then even like Tammy's been sick in here, and so I mean, a lot of my clients also just been sick as well. I think it's just the nature of this time of year in Hong Kong, and I think Hong Kong people we're also quite feeble people. We all seem to get quite sick quite easily, and especially when you're in a gym as well, it passes around fast. So
and you're putting your body through some hard things. So immune system's probably down a little bit, so a little bit more susceptible to it.
Yeah.
So all of that to say that it's been a very eventful, a very cool, but also pretty tiring end of 2023 and start to 2024. And I think we're both just kind of bouncing back now, looking forward to what's coming up, the CrossFit Open, quarterfinals, semi-finals, more athlete camps, building a team here. We've got some new coaches coming in to join us at the Process and Coastal, which is very, very exciting. I think we all just feel like this is going to be a great, great year.
You going to keep your mustache for the rest of this year?
Can I just ask, before I answer that, why did you ask?
I don't know. I was looking at your microphone and I could just see like a couple of
stray hairs,
black twigs sticking out the bottom of it. So I was wondering what was going on.
Don't know. I'm getting married in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm getting asked a question a lot. Yeah, you do. I'm getting asked a question a lot as to what's going to happen with my facial hair. I think that people are asking it because they don't want it to be there. But
I don't mind.
I quite like it.
Have you been trying the rolling stuff on your face?
Nah, I gave up on that years ago. The rolling stuff he's talking about, by the way, guys, is the Copenhagen Grooming Beard Growth Kit, which I invested in 1 year's worth, and I did not miss a day. And I would say...
I can see one hair sticking out your cheek, actually. From
Oh,
here.
yeah?
Yeah? You're close to it there.
Yeah.
Your left cheek.
There's a few cheek hairs coming out. Anyway.
It's painful, though, because you bought me one. I tried to use it. It just hurt my face.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to endure some pain for the results, you know?
Yeah, but, I mean,
I didn't have any results. Yeah, so
It
I just basically endured
made
it.
me bleed.
Yeah, I basically just gave myself a rash for a year and didn't actually get any new beard growth. I'm not, maybe it just didn't work for me. I'm not saying that Copenhagen Grooming doesn't work. I mean, they're still around.
Yeah.
They're still pumping a lot of money into marketing and advertising. So clearly it works for some people, but unfortunately it just didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll blame it on my Asian genetics.
Yeah.
Our Asian genetics, although yours is a bit better than mine. Anyway, we're not here to talk about beards today. That was not the intention. We're actually going to talk about the Cebu Throwdown. And we're going to use the Cebu Throwdown as a bit of a case study because I love the process. I think both of us love programming. A lot of my time is spent programming. I write the program for the Live Perform Compete and Elite programs, and obviously individual coaching. And I just love programming for CrossFit. So an opportunity like this, being asked to write workouts for a competition, I think is something I just love doing it. I think it aligns with my strengths and my passion, and I know it aligns with your strengths and your passions. And this was very much a collaborative effort where we kind of both put our heads together to kind of design these workouts. And of course, ultimately, we were the two that went down for this event to be there at the competition. So I wanted to kind of talk through the process of how we go from being asked to write workouts for a competition and how we get to the final day, which is, then delivering those workouts and people actually doing the competition.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually use a Cebu Throwdown as a bit of a case study as we go through this. Okay. So I think firstly, let's talk about where this opportunity came from. This opportunity didn't come completely out of the blue. This was Cebu Throwdown's second iteration, second year running. They had, I think they said in their eyes, a pretty successful year, but there was aspects of the comp they wanted to improve, and one of those areas was also the programming side of things. I think for them, they saw partnering with the process programming as being a value add, but also we just got a great relationship with AC Stedge and the team there. We work with those guys every week. We love those guys, and I think any opportunity for me to work with people that I enjoy working with, I'm going to jump at those opportunities because they're just fun and enjoyable experiences. So they had basically approached us and said, would we be open to programming for the competition? And we didn't really give much thought. We're like, yeah, we're going to do this. Historically, I've done a few of these in the past. Obviously, we've done a lot of competitions in the process in Coastal here, where we've been responsible for the programming. We started CrossFit competitions. When did we do our first one?
Would have been like the
Battle of the Bay. No, not Battle. What was it?
It would have been the Snow Jam or...
No, but way before that. First team comp. CrossFit in the old Coastal Fitness. Shootout. Yeah,
Team
2014.
Shootout. Yeah.
Even before that, the very first iteration of the Downtown Throwdown.
Yeah.
2013, I think it might have been. 2013, we first opened the gym.
Yeah, maybe 2013, 2014.
Yeah, so we've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. Also had the pleasure of working with the Jakarta Wad-Off for a couple of years, where writing the program for their competition. And then we basically had 3 years in the pandemic where no one was running competition, so we didn't really do any of it.
In Asia,
yeah. So I think having been presented with the opportunity, for me, it was a no-brainer. Like, love doing it. If we can help one of our affiliates and good friends down in Subterra, elevate what they're trying to do and, strengthen our relationship, then that's going to always be a yes for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think also it's just, although we're still working with the affiliates and, I guess now good friends of ours as well, I think it's also just an amazing chance to connect with people, whether we were going to go down there or not, whether it's through social media or whatever it might be. It was still a good chance to connect with the wider community that we haven't really had a huge reach out to. We now have a foot in Manila and Cebu, but there's loads of other parts of the Philippines that we haven't been to. There were guys that flew in from Malaysia for the competition, and yeah, it's just a really good chance for us to just link up and network with people and get to know people around the area.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the Cebu Throwdown now. So, after we'd agreed to say yes, we'd love to write the workouts for your competition, there are a few things that we had to square away before we even sat down to start writing workouts. I think the first thing to talk about here is online qualifiers. So by the point that we had joined the team to agree on writing the workouts, online qualifiers had already been designed and released. So we actually didn't have a part to play really in the online qualifiers. But the very first thing we talked about was we need to find out what you guys as a competition organizers, envision for your company for this competition. So first things are like, what's the objectives? What do you guys really want to achieve in this competition? Now, some competitions going to say, we want to find the fittest athlete in the world. That would probably be the mission of the CrossFit Games. For the Cebu Throwdown, yes, they wanted to find the fittest athlete in each respective division, but it was also more about, highlighting the importance of fitness, community. They wanted to be able to showcase, fitness and people like getting up there and doing hard things across different age divisions and across different ability levels. And so like participation and like excitement and community were big parts of the Cebu Throwdown. And that definitely, had an impact on the workouts that we designed and like the flow of the whole day. Other key essentials, fill in the gaps if I miss any here, Ant. It was a 1-day competition.
Yeah.
So basically it was going to start around 7, 8 a.m. and they didn't want it to drag on to be for the whole day.
Yeah.
Right. It wanted to be kind of like finish at a respectable hour, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. They left it to us as to how many events we would get in. What we had straight away agreed on was that, okay, you only got 1 day here. Most 1-day competitions will have 2 to 3 tests.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, if we want to find, the fittest athlete, it's tough to do that in just 3 set tests. So we can find a way to test 4, maybe even 5. That would be, I think give us much more data on the athletes and find a much more well-rounded person. What other things do we need to know? We need to know what equipment was available.
Yeah. Equipment, space. So we can talk about that quickly. They had an equipment sponsor, and we knew straight from the start what equipment was going to be provided by the sponsor. And if there was any additional equipment that was going to be needed, then we would have to find a way to get that ourselves. So, in this particular competition, we had Metcon bikes, which is like an assault bike. We had a rig, we had barbells, we had sandbags. Metcon provided all of it.
Yeah, plates. We had boxes. What else am I missing here?
I mean, like they did all the flooring and all that sort of stuff as well, which obviously allows, because the pitch was AstroTurf, so stuff like skipping is a bit more challenging on that, or if you're lifting. So they also put down the flooring and platforms, which is great as well. Yeah.
Oh, you just mentioned something there. We had a football pitch.
Yeah.
So we knew that the space that was going to be required, and this is all through conversation and meetings on the telephone or on Zoom, but we knew that space required for the comp was going to be a football pitch.
Yeah.
So you basically had one full-size football pitch. At somewhere on that football pitch, they would construct a rig that would give us the option of having pull-up bars and handstand push-up stations if we wanted it.
Yeah. Also the canopy, because obviously Cebu is a very tropical destination for those that don't know, and weather can be very temperamental, and I guess we'll get to it later on, but it did actually end up raining on the day, so having that canopy over the rig made it easier for if we had to switch up anything or have a plan B, we didn't have to do it for a lot of the workouts because of the canopy area, which is great.
Divisions.
Yeah,
so that was something that we'd spoke to the team about, which was how many divisions do you want? And it was really nice. This whole process, it was very much a back and forth process. Finding what were the non-negotiables for them, and then just creating suggestions, putting ideas forward, and basically finding the best solution for everyone. One of the things we said was that sometimes when you have loads of divisions at a competition, it's really great to maximize participation. And of course, as an event, that can be a beneficial thing from a financial perspective. And also, for them, they wanted to get, showcase lots of different ability levels and lots of different ages. But one of the drawbacks can be that it just extends the day and makes it really, really long.
Yeah.
I think a really cool part of good competitions is this, like the spectator and the engagement side of things as well. When you have athletes on the floor, but no one's there watching and no one's there cheering, which tends to happen when you have really, really long days and just loads of people on the floor. It's kind of not as exciting and not as memorable. So we wanted to make sure that, every time athletes stepped onto the floor, it was exciting, it was engaging, and we'd maximize, people actually wanting to be there. And so rather than just filling up every single minute of the day, we suggested, and, they agreed as well, let's not invite, 20, 30 athletes in each division. And instead, let's limit the number of athletes in each division and make sure, that we have more competitive heats. Now, there's definitely like pros and cons to everything, right? You have lots of heats, allows people who perhaps are newer to the sport or don't have as high abilities to still be a part of it. But again, when you actually look at the spectators and, let's say, consumption of watching or spectating high-level sport, in CrossFit, most of the people will watch the top 2 heats, right? And so this is where things like the online qualifiers serve a really important purpose. Those testers have to be good enough to be getting the best athletes there who are going to be able to compete on game day. I just want to think, one other thing that just sprung to mind there is that we actually set prerequisites as well. One of the things that often happens in competitions, and we've seen this in a few competitions in Asia already this year, is the tests that are programmed are not appropriate for the people in that division doing the tests. And so when we say not appropriate, what does that actually mean? It could be like the skill is just too high for the ability levels of the people in the tests, or maybe the loads are too heavy, or the volume is just inappropriate. So what ends up happening is that people are just on the floor.
Nothing happens.
Not able to do anything. And whilst, that's not very fun for the athlete, yes, it's great. Someone hits their first muscle up. That's awesome. But, when they're stood under the rings for 15 minutes, not being able to do anything, it's not necessarily the most fun thing for the athlete. And it's not the most fun thing for the audience, who are engaging in it. And the volunteers and the judges. So, to stop that happening, we suggested that we set prerequisites for each division. So each division has to be able to do a minimum of X, Y, and Z. And what that means that if we programmed X, Y, and Z in the competition, we would have confidence that everyone would be able to do the test and, get the intended...
excel at it,
excel at it and get the intended response, So if we wanted it to be, a hard aerobic test and it had certain movements in it, people would need to be able to do those movements proficiently, so it's actually an aerobic test.
Yeah, for sure. I think also, as well as the athletes, maybe not enjoying it because they're just not doing anything, they can't progress through the workout, or the spectators just think it's boring. It's also, it makes the sport look crap. And at the end of the day, like AC said that he wants to promote health, fitness, being able to do cool things with their bodies through, the open, scaled, all the way up to masters. And I think, when, it often happens in maybe like the scaled divisions when people kind of get bottlenecked and just can't move. Like that doesn't draw people who might be passing by or might have just been dragged down by a friend to come and watch it. Doesn't really inspire them to do much. You want to see people crushing it. You want to see like people loving what they're doing out there versus looking dejected, not moving. So I think that's a super important point of any competition. And of course, again, it depends on what the goal of the comp is. If it's a CrossFit Games and you can't clean and jerk 315, then, well, unfortunately not the fittest on earth. But, if it's Cebu Throwdown, the goals are slightly different, the priorities are different. So,
something we also spoke about with the organizers was like, how important is entertainment value? And I think this is something I think about a lot when it comes to programming in CrossFit, is that there's a difference sometimes between programming something that's genuinely a really good test and programming something that might not be as good a test, but is exciting and entertaining to watch. And I think when it comes to, like spectator events like the CrossFit Games or like the Cebu Throwdown, I think it's important that you've got to think about that as well. If we're talking about trying to create a really memorable experience, we've got to be thinking about it not just from the competitor standpoint, but the spectators, the fans, the family members, the people who come down to watch, the sponsors, the people who are there as well, who are investing in it, like they want to see something exciting. So that was something we asked, and the middle ground that we all agreed on was that we want the test to still be good. Like it has to be an even balanced test of fitness, but we want to try and make it exciting as well. And so, what are things that contribute in your eyes, Ant, to like an event being exciting, an event maybe not being so exciting?
I think this is something that we definitely had the opportunity to work with because we had a football field. And I think one thing that is really cool in competitions, especially like this one, is when you can provide athletes with a test that they can't normally do. So when you have space like a football field, like you can utilize the entire length of the field if you wanted to. You can have more lanes out there if you wanted to. But in terms of like spectatorship, making it exciting, I think even if you brought a random person off the street and just stuck them in the stands, they need to be able to know what's going on.
Yeah.
They need to be able to, and that comes down to the organizers getting the athletes to tell the story as it happens. So if they're in round one, there's something that clearly dictates that they're in round one, or they're at a certain position on the field, or a certain position on the floor, or a certain point in the rig, or a certain barbell, whatever it might be, which shows where they're at. And they can basically progress on through the workout. I think that's really important. I think actually just clear viewership. A lot of the time you can look at a competition for it just looks like chaos. I mean, it looks like chaos, like it's not fun to watch because you don't know what you're trying to watch. So like clear movements with like a very easily understandable movement standard makes it more enjoyable. Yes, like, it is cool sometimes when like a random movement gets thrown in and athletes just got to figure it out on the fly. But more often than not, it's better when people can just do all the movements and like move fast through it. And I think that's another thing is like speed. I think, you look at the Olympics, what's the most viewed event at the Olympics? It's generally speaking the 100 and 200 meter sprint. And like people love to see like raw power, raw speed, raw strength. So, those are events that you want to try and throw into the mix and get people to be close as close as possible. So like, if you're watching a football game and you're like up in the nosebleed section, like you're not actually a part of it, versus if you're like down pitch side, it's way more exciting to be a part of it. So bringing the audience in close is something that I would definitely look to do. And I know the Cebu Throwdown guys did an awesome job of doing that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all of those points. Yeah, I think there's things to think about, like, AMRAPs. If you're going to do things like AMRAPs, which can be fantastic tests of fitness and are very much embedded in CrossFit methodology. But again, like you said, finding a way to show an audience and also fellow competitors, where everyone is at within the race. So, the CrossFit games or good competition will often achieve this by like moving a chess piece. Like every round you move the marker forward.
Or if you've got enough money and space, you can do it like Mary when they literally had 2 separate rigs.
Yeah, you're moving down a field throughout an AMRAP. So that's one way to do it. You also want to see races, right? You want competitors to know where one another are so that you have that like exciting battle, like people sprinting to finish lines, people like, on the rowers at the same time, and the judges' hands are counting down, and exactly where they're at on their calories. Like you said, just moving down the field, judges helping tell the story of the athletes. And that's definitely something we thought about a lot when designing these workouts, was we want to make it engaging as well as, a good test of fitness.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I think in a second we're going to actually talk about the workouts and how we actually decided and landed on those workouts. One other point you just said there, which was good, was we wanted to expose athletes to elements of training that perhaps they don't do that much in the gym. I think it's important not only from a test of fitness, like see who can adapt in the moment and do something they maybe haven't done, but I also see it from a standpoint of extending people's lifelines within the methodology.
Yeah.
When we're just doing barbell thrusters, pull-ups and rowing, and you've been doing that for 10 years, like a lot of people find that even CrossFit, which is probably the most varied training methodology in sport of all sports out there, can get monotonous and boring. And I think what we've seen with Bosman, at the CrossFit Open, quarterfinals and games, adding new elements, the moment that competition finishes, there's a big trickle effect into the gyms where people start incorporating those things into training. One of the things that Bosman really felt strongly about was like the basics of gymnastics aren't tested enough. And we saw that after he took control, he started programming tests. A lot of people now in their affiliates, different programming organizations like ourselves, are focusing a lot more on that. And there's lots of new movements that people are doing, wall facing handstand push-ups, freestandings, pirouettes, bar pullovers, ring rolls, all that kind of stuff just adds new challenges to training. So that was another objective of ours, right? Can we get people to think a bit more outside the box, and we get back to their gyms, we really explore different avenues of fitness. But I do think there is a sweet spot with that, because like you said, the audience also wants to be able to relate to what the competitors are doing.
Yeah.
So if every test is just something completely different that the audience has never experienced before, then the audience can't really relate. You can lose that wow factor a bit, to be like, wow, I can't believe that person is doing that. That's mental.
Yeah.
You know, because I did that in my gym last week and like I got nowhere near that. So I think that's another thing as programmers we got to think about as well.
For sure.
Okay. Should we go through the workouts?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So events, what we decided on, we decided on 4 tests. So we wanted to get 4 scoring opportunities, and we ended up having the divisions we had the RX male, RX female, we had the scaled male, scaled female, we had the RX masters male 40 plus. This is just due to signups. And then we had scaled masters male, scaled masters female, and we had a scaled masters category as well.
Yeah.
So we ended up having 1, 2, 3, 4,
Maybe
5, 6, 7 divisions in total. The only divisions that had multiple heats were the scaled men, scaled females, RX men, RX females. I think every other division just had 1 heat, which made it a bit more exciting.
Yeah.
So events 1 and 2 were, it was a 2-minute AMRAP. They had to do a 400-meter shuttle, so up and down the football pitch. And then in the remaining time of the 2 minutes, they had to do as many overhead squats as possible. And then they rested 2 minutes. Then they had another 2-minute AMRAP. Again, started with a 400-meter shuttle run, and then the remaining time, as many hang snatches as possible with a barbell, same barbell.
Load,
Rest 2 minutes, and then they had only 2 minutes to build to a 1 rep max hang snatch. So the 2 scorings were, 1 was a total number of barbell reps completed in the first 2 AMRAPs, and then the second score was the heaviest load lifted for the hang snatch. Okay, and we were sat on an airplane when we basically first started putting our heads together for what these workouts were. Before we got on the airplane, we had all the equipment finalized. We had all the equipment was finalized. The space was finalized. So we basically had like 2 hours on this flight back from Thailand, more than 2 hours, actually 3 hours, to basically get our first draft of ideas down. How did we come up with events 1 and 2?
I think before we actually think about the actual 1 and 2 that we did, again, when we decided on 4 workouts, we had to get balance across the 4 tests, right? So, you're kind of testing max strength with event 2. Of course, it's under fatigue, so maybe not pure max strength or absolute
but a heavy
strength,
test.
But yeah, it's a heavy test. It's a heavy strength test. So, the people who excel there are going to have a good chance to showcase what they can do. But then you also gave a chance to maybe the people who aren't as strong, who are more proficient at running or whatever it might be. So we're looking at like running or fatigue repeatability with the run, and then barbell cycling on the squats and the snatches. So that like ticked off 2 big areas that we kind of like to test anyway within a balanced test of fitness. When you look at the tests that we ended up with the overhead squat and the snatch, we kind of thought back to events that we really liked and what we enjoyed watching. And I think the one that we both said was a really cool one was the shuttle to overhead. Was that what it's called? The games? Yeah, shuttle to overhead, where they had to do the shuttle runs and into the AMRAP of jerks in remaining time off the blocks. And that was really cool. Obviously slightly different format, but it worked really well, and it delivered really cool results. Of course, like some people excelled more than others, but it tested a number of different things within a single test, which is really cool. Yeah. So we took inspiration from that test. We wanted to utilize at some point the space that we had at the football field. We got a whole field. It'd be so cool to see athletes like running all the way down. And I think in CrossFit gyms, running is either tested right now as 25-foot shuttles, because that's what comes up in the open, or it's kind of like running incorporated into a WOD, which is slow.
Which is slow, and it's long, and it's outdoors, generally speaking. So we thought it'd be cool to get 400 meters, because it's a classic like running around a track, although this was a shuttle, and it was going to be cool to actually see a race. We got 8 athletes all side by side running down the pitch, kind of like the 100-meter sprint. And basically they had to basically turn around, a marker at the end of the pitch and then run back. And then it was cool to basically come in and just go straight into a barbell movement. So if you guys now understand the tests, one of the things we thought was, okay, it's really important that athletes actually have to push themselves here.
Because you could sandbag.
You can sandbag it. What you could do, for example, you could do the first 2-minute AMRAP, run, do your overhead squats, and like go hard. and then you could essentially skip the next 2 minutes. But if you got enough overhead squats in the first one, potentially still have a decent enough score, and then give yourself essentially
6-minute rest,
6 minutes of rest, and then hit something heavier. So we wanted to stop that happening.
Yeah.
We didn't want athletes to be able to game this, so we actually created a penalty, which was if you weren't able to execute 1 repetition on the barbell. So basically, if you sandbagged the run and you didn't complete the run within 2 minutes, then there would be a penalty, and the penalty would be X number of pounds off your max lift.
Yeah.
Reason we chose that was that everyone's probably going to have hit a max lift.
Yeah.
So that was where you're going to get penalized. So that forced athletes to have to complete 400 meters within 2 minutes. And I think pretty much everyone, there were a few athletes who fell a little bit short. I know there's quite a few athletes who got a rep on the overhead squat, which was really cool, and they were stoked to do that. But that was a tough one as well.
On the hang snatch, I think you mean.
On the they got one, they got the overhead squat, they didn't get a hang snatch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that was cool because we want people to make sure that I think running is something I want people to train a little bit more in CrossFit gyms, because I think it's just such a what's the word I'm looking for? For some reason the word tribal is coming into my head.
It's like a natural human thing to do.
Natural human thing. That's not the word I was looking for. Anyway, it'll come back to me. It's just such a primal movement that I think people should be doing. There was a penalty associated with that. There was also a penalty for false starts.
Yeah.
So if people started their run early, they would also get repetitions minus off their. I don't think anyone did get that. I think maybe one athlete in one of the first early heats.
Mav was damn close to getting it. I saw him set off pretty early.
Yeah. So, and I think the feedback on that workout was that people really enjoyed it, and it was
they all dreaded it though as well.
Dreaded it, yeah.
Because no one actually knew the length of the shuttle. They just saw that it was a 400-meter run, and what it ended up being was essentially 4 100-meter lengths, right? And I mean, it worries me that people look at like a 2-minute time domain and they maybe can't complete that, but it also just shows a lack of maybe programming within a gym or within a program as well. Because like you said, running is either in like a horribly fatigued state, let's say like a Helen style workout where you have to do a 400-meter run, but people are dead from pull-ups and kettlebell swings, or it's just shuttle runs turning on the spot where a lot of the time people will just walk that. So like actually being able to express proper, true stride out style running is something that not a lot of us actually do. So it's cool to be able to test that. Yeah, agreed. So what we tested people's ability to run fast over a slightly longer distance than just 25 foot. Their ability to cycle a barbell. It was like a moderate load barbell, 115 pounds for men for our RX division. Yeah. And then to be able to do 2-minute bouts, recover in 2 minutes and go again. So testing aerobic capacity as well. Yeah. And then of course to be able to hit something heavy. So that was going to take technique because it's a hang snatch. We picked a more technical movement. You got to have technique. You got to have absolute strength speed. And you got to be able to have a well-developed aerobic system to recover in such a short time and hit it. So I think we were able to tick a lot of boxes in that very first test. Yeah. Let's move on to technically test 3 because we had 2 tests in the first 2. I also think it's really good that whilst we ticked off so many different style of tests, we actually didn't use many movements. And a lot of the time, like, we'll get back to go into a chipper style workout. When you put a chipper in, you're like throwing in every movement under the sun, and suddenly you're like, oh shit, well, we've already tested like a lot of hinging, we've already tested a lot of squatting, and then suddenly you start to run out of movement. So I think the way that we were able to do that test, or those 2 tests, was efficient.
A barbell weight place. I mean, that's actually a really good point. One of the things that the event organizer AC had said is once we got given our equipment list from Metcon, who were the sponsor, we wanted to really just try and keep it to that equipment list. Yeah. And I think, a lot of events will try to just put, like you said, loads of movements in there. To almost get fancy for fancy's sake. But there's obviously problems involved with that, right? The poor event organizers, the volunteers, they're spending a lot of time and energy just constantly changing weights. It's tough for competition organizers to get equipment to a venue if it's not provided by a sponsor. So what we actually said was, let's try and create tests that we think are balanced, good, exciting tests, make our sponsors happy, but don't require us to have to bring additional equipment down.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we had to bring that sponsor didn't provide was rowers,
Yeah.
which was actually quite an easy thing to bring in the end. So that was another thing we definitely thought about. Okay, so event 3 was a chipper.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a
down and back
a
style.
down and back style. Yeah. So the workout was, they started with 50 calories on the rower, then they went to 35 box jump overs, then they went into a gymnastics complex. We'll just talk about the RX division. Yeah. The gymnastics complex was 1 toes to bar into 1 chest to bar. That was 1 repetition, and it had to be done unbroken. Men had to do 25, females 20. Then they went onto a skipping rope where they had to do 75 single crossovers into 50 double unders. Then they went back to pull-up bar, but this time they went 15 and 10 bar muscle-ups, and then back to 35 box jump overs, and then back to the calorie row. And then they had to run onto the finish mat to finish. Okay, do you want to start by talking about this workout? Some of the thoughts you had behind it?
Yeah, so we wanted a longer workout here. We knew the first one was basically tested in 2-minute time domains, so this one wanted to be a bit of a longer stretch. Again, we knew we were going to have a shorter event at the end, so this one we could play about with a longer time cap, and we wanted athletes out there for like 10 minutes plus, basically. Of course, the faster athletes would be like maybe sub 10. The slower athletes are going to be like up towards a time cap, which I think was 16 minutes or 15 minutes? 16 minutes, yeah. So and another thing we wanted here was, because the points that we spoke about just a minute ago was, when you have like skipping, gymnastics, box jump overs, rowing, it can be complete chaos on the floor, especially if it's in a tight space. And actually, this is the event where it started raining on. But the way we had it set up, and the event organizers set it up, was the rowers. If you can imagine like an 8-lane rig, let's call that point A, and then point B was the furthest point away from it, which was where the rowers were set up. So basically, throughout the row to the box jump to the skipping and then gymnastics, it basically moved down in one line, and once you moved back towards the row, you're basically moving back up the floor again, and that was the ability to show the story on where people were at. So that was a really cool thing to be able to show. Luckily, we did have a canopy, so we could pull the rowers back under when it did start to rain a little bit. But yeah, the tests that we wanted to test here were definitely a bit more aerobic capacity here. So yeah, testing that energy system. We wanted to test athletes' ability to be able to think on the fly. So we only allowed 1 skipping rope, and what we've seen a lot with the crossovers have come out is that athletes generally use like a heavier beaded style rope or a thicker rope for the crossovers, and then when they go back to double unders, they then go back to their speed rope. So we put a little caveat in there, said you had to use 1 rope. You choose, you can be the beaded rope or the thicker rope or a speed rope if you can do it. So that was one thing. We wanted to test their skills on the fly, because another thing, we announced this one on the day as well, right? And then the next thing we wanted to test was also the ability to take a movement that everyone can do. Let's take the toes to bar, chest to bar. Everyone can do toes to bar. Everyone can do chest to bars. But has anyone been practicing it as a toes to bar, chest to bar? So you put that gymnastic complex, which you mentioned Boz has been kind of throwing in there, doing basics. Like, you should be able to link a toes to bar into a chest to bar. But if you're not actually proficient in your kipping mechanics, then that's going to be difficult for you. So testing that and then making sure that it was unbroken, put an extra test in there for these guys. So it's like although it was definitely a very much aerobic workout, there was a lot of skill being tested in simple movements, really. Yeah, this was also, we wanted to get some gymnastics movements into the workout. We decided to not do handstand push-ups or use the kind of walls, because that would have just been another element. And I think it's always hard to watch handstand push-ups, especially in a rig where people are side onto a rig. It's difficult to see actually what's happening in a race. So we decided to not go with the handstand push-ups, and instead the gymnastics element we would test would be that. And again, like you said, people have done toes to bars and chest to bars and do it all the time, and we want to challenge people to think a bit more outside the box. And what happens when you have to do one straight into the other. Yeah. You reminded me of something that I haven't mentioned yet, which is how many of these workouts did we release ahead of time and how much did we save on the day? Yeah. A lot of competitions, let's say at the CrossFit semifinals, will release their workouts, multiple days in advance. What that does, it gives the athlete an opportunity to test, refine strategies, and basically come into the event, with a clear strategy in mind and a lot of confidence.
And I think I don't mind that being a part of CrossFit, CrossFit competitions. I think, athletes having that ability to do it and essentially build the most effective strategy for them means that typically race times on the day are going to be faster. I also think it's important though to be able to be presented with a workout, create a strategy in the moment, and then just do it.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to basically get both. So out of the 4 events, 2 of them were released, events 1 and 2, what we talked about already, and event 4, the final event, were released ahead of time. And it was announced to the athletes that they would find out what event 3 was during the athlete briefing on before day 1 started. So then no one would really have an opportunity to actually practice them.
Yeah.
We did give hints on what it would feel like. We said something like hang, skip, row, something like that, and like something around like your lungs are going to be breathing. So it was actually really cool in the week leading up, everyone guessing what the workout might be, and it was actually really cool to see people just
educated guesses.
Because they knew what had already been programmed, right?
Correct. Yeah, you got 3 tests already there. It's like everyone's like, oh, this one must be long with gymnastics, or you're definitely going to test like ring muscle-ups, or something. It was along those lines. But everyone's guesses were pretty close,
and it was cool to see that when people were trying it out, they were trying complexes.
Yeah,
they were thinking. I love it when people were saying they were trying to get into our minds to know what we might program based on what we program on our training programs.
Yeah,
and a lot of people were doing things like double crossovers, complexes, toes to bar, into chest to bars, into bar muscle ups. I don't think anyone actually got the toes to bar, chest to bar right. But yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I think the execution of that race was cool. I think our time cap was almost perfect, where a lot of people actually did get across that finish line. And it was just really cool to see them finishing on that rower, and then some races start to play out. One of the things we said was really important for the judges was that we did want the judges to give a countdown, when athletes were getting towards their final 5 calories, because I think at competitions a lot of judges do that, but sometimes not all the judges do it.
Yeah.
So some judges will remember to have their hands up, but some judges won't.
Yeah.
And then the athlete would just get off. And again, the whole idea was that we want the judges to be telling the story as to what's happening.
The spectators get involved.
Yeah, the moment the hand goes up and the judge, you just hear the crowd kind of erupt and get really excited knowing that an athlete's going to finish. You see another judge's hand go up, that there's a bit of a sprint finish can happen. So that was really cool.
I think one thing from that, from the programming of that event that we missed out was both the gymnastics and the skipping element had a increasing complexity as we went through. So I would actually say, crossovers are actually more simple for people these days now. We've had enough time to practice them. Single crossovers they are. So the gymnastic complex went from a toes to bar, chest to bar, and then into bar muscle-ups afterwards. And then the skipping went from single crossovers into double unders. So yeah, that's again another challenge. The pattern changes slightly for both things. The pattern has changed on the kip for some people, for the toes to bar, chest to bar, and then you have to then do this essentially the same movement, but slightly different under more fatigue again when you go to the bar muscle up. And same with the skipping. Your hands are crossing your body versus now the hands moving fast by your side. Have you got the right ropes? Were you prepared for that? Some people definitely were having trouble with the ropes for sure. Some people had predicted crossovers, but had never practiced double unders with crossovers. So that was a new thing for them as well.
Yeah, and I also do think the fact that no one had a chance to do these movements before and test a workout, I think a lot of people got their pacing quite wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, looked at it and thought, that doesn't sound too hard.
Yeah.
And then probably went out a little bit too hot in that first gymnastics complex and then got, caught out on the second half of the workout. And that was kind of cool, being able to trip people up a little bit, but still get, the test of fitness that we were looking for.
For sure.
Okay. So let's move into our last workout. So I think we need context here. What have we already programmed? We've got the short, fast repeatability. We've got strength. We've got barbell cycling already done. We have the long aerobic test with touches of gymnastics and skipping skill in there. What that kind of leaves is we actually programmed this one pretty much last, which is we now needed something kind of between like the 4 to 6 minute time domain Yes, I would love to have had like a longer test, I think, in the competition, like something that's like 20 minutes plus, like really testing someone's aerobic capacity. But given it was only one day and the amount of divisions we had, we didn't really have the opportunity to test that. So the 16-minute time cap for event 3 was like our long test. But for sure, I think if I could have another choice, I would have a longer test in there.
Yeah.
But then we wanted to really have like, okay, an all-out kind of assault, something hard that athletes would just have to like grit their teeth and get into with a shorter time cap. So we're expecting athletes to finish between the kind of 4 to 6 minute mark.
Yeah.
So that workout ended up being, they had to start with 20/15 calories on the assault bike as a buy-in. And then they had to complete the following: 15, 12, 9 bar facing burpees, alternated with 2, 4, 6 alternating sandbag over the shoulder. So basically went back and forth in his movements, and to finish, they would have to pick up their sandbag, carry it 10 meters to the finish line, where they would then, have their time checked. Yeah. You want to talk us through why we ended up on this one?
Yeah, so I mean, again, like you said, we wanted that shorter time domain, 4 to 6 minutes. But we also wanted to force people with the time cap, but also with the movements to be able to move fast. Putting a buy-in of any movement, and especially an assault bike, it always lures people in. 20 calories, you could do that in less than 20 seconds. Let's be honest, if you really did try and sprint it. So a lot of people kind of like just throw that to the wind and like just get on with it. And then suddenly, you get kind of hit by a bit of a freight train when you try and pick up a sandbag and you're having to drop down to the floor and do burpees, and then move back and forth in a couplet and then do it all over again by picking the bag up and going to the end. But in terms of the test, again, we were able to test something that people don't, especially in the Philippines as well. They don't really have that much access to things like sandbags. They don't have the opportunity to move it up and down the field. People kind of do sandbag squats, they might do the cleans, but actually then picking it up and carrying it is something that we've seen tested again at like the semifinals level. We had to carry the 200-pound sandbag. We had them telling the story through the 3 rounds where they moved the bag each time. But again, this one was a bit of grit your teeth and like knuckle down, and you don't have the option to go slow, because if you went slow, you got time capped, which a lot of people did. And the people that are successful like had a very high pace on the bike, but not quite all out. And then they were able to maintain that high effort throughout the descending and ascending rep scheme of the sandbag and burpees. But yeah, it was a bit of a gut check, to be honest.
Yeah,
which is something that we hadn't tested yet.
And I think also, we are, as we're designing these workouts, we're also checking off equipment that we want to use. Yeah. We didn't really want to use any equipment twice. We wanted each test to be kind of like a fresh new test. That's why we only saw 1 barbell throughout the whole competition. Metcon, the sponsor, had said they wanted to provide sandbags. Yeah. So that basically meant that we had to try and get sandbags into one of the events, which ended up being this one. They'd also provided an assault bike. Up until this point in time, we hadn't used an assault bike. We'd done lots of iterations of all these workouts and kind of like changed and tried moving things around, changed the order lots of times. We need to get the assault bike in there as well. And then, just a burpee, it was just a simple movement. There's no technique really involved with that. It's just kind of like a grit your teeth and go. Yeah. I think something that was probably caught us by surprise, especially with the RX divisions, was just the sandbags were a lot harder for people. Yeah. And I think because of the sandbags were basically, once you would drop them, they would almost take like a solid mold of the position they would fall in. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's because the sand might have been a bit wet in the inside.
I think it's just a bit damp, so it didn't mold too well. It didn't hold shape like a normal sandbag.
People basically trying to pick up a square or a triangle sometimes, which is very hard with a sandbag. So, in us watching that, I think we got the right dose response in the scaled and the masters divisions with a slightly lighter bag. They were able to really push it. I think in the RX division, especially for the men, I think the men are the ones that struggle the most with those sandbags, not quite keeping their soft shape. Yeah, it ended up being much more of a sandbag workout than we had actually envisioned. So that was a good learning opportunity for us.
I still think the best athletes still came out on top though.
Still finished in 4:30, I think, which is what we had said would be the winning time. So yeah, for sure. Yeah. So something else we're thinking about the whole time when we're programming this competition is movements. Yeah. What are we actually asking of the human bodies that are doing these tests? And I think something that we have to probably admit is that any competition is always going to have a bias of some sort. Yeah. So, and I've been victim of, I've been guilty of this when I first started competing, basically slagging off every competition, being like, oh, there was a bias towards this, there was a bias towards this. And obviously I would say that when I didn't win.
Yeah.
But, to create 4 tests only and not have any biases is almost impossible.
Yeah.
But our goal is to really try to find 4 tests that are really going to reward and crown the fittest, most balanced athlete in all divisions. So what do we mean by that? It means they've got to be aerobically fit, so they've got to be able to go, long. They've got to be able to be powerful, so like high output, shorter events. They've got to have a broad range of skills, not just in gymnastics, but the barbell, sandbags. We want to also test different planes of movement. So, are we getting the right amount of volume for, arms pressing overhead, from hanging off a bar, squatting versus hinging? So, with all the events, I think we got a pretty good blend of, different movement patterns throughout it, so that if you are a really good squatter, it didn't mean, if we'd have put squatting into every event, there would have been a higher likelihood of you winning that. Also, think about the size of the athlete.
Yeah.
That's something I always think about. We wanted to try create a set of tests which would benefit, aspects of the test would benefit the shorter athlete, smaller athlete, but also benefit the bigger and taller athlete.
Yeah.
And I think we got a nice blend of that. Events 1 and 2 was a good example. The shorter athlete might be more proficient in the running and the barbell cycling, but then the big athlete might be more proficient on the max lift.
Yeah.
On the second workout, the big athlete might be more proficient with, the calories on a rower, which is a big chunk of the workout, but the smaller athlete might be more proficient on things like bar muscle ups, chest to bars, toes to bars, skipping, and box jump overs.
Yeah.
And then that final workout, got salt bike buy-in. That's going to help the bigger athlete, but then they got to go do burpees. It's going to help the smaller athlete. Sandbag might benefit the bigger athlete. So again, trying to just find that balance. Yeah. And then when we look at our podium, it was quite, to be honest, everyone in the Philippines is a little bit shorter anyway. Yeah. But we had, varying body types on the podium.
Yeah.
We had Justin in the elite men's division, who's, a monster, probably about 5 foot. If Justin's listening, I'll say shorter than that. I think he's a bit shorter than me. And then you had, Kobe and Jericho, who are probably on the shorter side. So that was nice as well to get a blend of different athletes on the podium, which I think shows that, okay, our tests were quite even.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think when we go back and we look at it and we're kind of doing like analysis of how it all went, I think all the things that we spoke about at the beginning as like what we wanted to get out of it, I think predominantly we ticked most of those boxes. I think I think this is something that's really important to understand, is that when a competition like the Cebu Throwdown or the guys at Sub-Zero reach out to someone like the Process Program, we know their community, we know the Philippines fairly well, but we definitely don't know it as well as they do. So like some of the workouts we'd actually programmed, and you and I had been like, yep, this is cool, this is finalized. And then AC and Jefferson and the team actually came back and said, oh, actually, these guys can probably do more than what you guys are actually giving them. So like that collaborative effort was really important, because, we could have missed the mark, and rather than it being an aerobic test, they would have finished it in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So like it was really important that they had their feedback as well. And I think that made the test just a bit more legitimate for, like you said, for the audience that's actually taking part in it. I don't honestly remember more seeing it like people getting bottlenecked and like severely time capped or just not moving at all, which I think is good. I really liked what they did, which was they kept changing the competition floor, which encouraged the audience to come down, the spectators to come down and like surround the athletes and create more of a buzz and more of an atmosphere. So like on the running one, they were up and down the side of the running. And then as soon as you went to event 3, they kind of closed off the running part and brought everyone onto the main part of the football field around the canopy. And then that, helped when people were on the rowers to cheer them on. And yeah, I think that was really cool that they did that as well.
Yeah, I think that's where I wanted to kind of finish, which was, by no means do we take credit for how good the Cebu Throwdown was. I think the Cebu Throwdown was a pretty amazing competition, and this is no biases involved. But when I think about it from all aspects, of course, the programming side of things, that's what our responsibility was. But then, just the athlete experience, are things running on time? What did the athletes get? Everyone got 3 shirts, they got a kit bag. There was commentators
Live
It was
streams.
it was in a stadium. There was this live stream which was awesome. You know, that live stream was like super pro. There was a big screen up so you could watch it on the screen the whole time. They had the workout listed on the screen. They had like almost like a
heat list.
Heat list, yeah. So
sponsors,
sponsors, yeah. It was just a very cool, well-run event. But I want to say that, you know, all of that stuff that we just talked about had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
You know, that was left to, you know, the team, Jefferson, Adrian, and AC, and all the volunteers from Cebu and, you know, from Zotero and the other gyms as well. All the amazing sponsors, they put loads of hard work into actually making it a really, really cool event. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised experiencing the event, just how much work and organization they had put into making it a really great event. And, you know, probably in reflection, that's probably something that I would do more of, you know, when deciding who to work with. I'd love to know what they're actually going to do on the event to make sure that, you know, the event running and coordination and the execution matched, you know, the programming that we're going to put in there, because you can write great programming and then none of that stuff is taken care of, and, you know, then it's not a memorable experience, or vice versa. You know, you put in all that amazing stuff but the programming is not right. You know, I think those two things have to pair each other. So I think in this instance, you know, we're very lucky that these guys, you know, did an incredible job.
Yeah.
So I think just to close off, you know, this is something that we certainly love doing. Being there actually on the day was like just the cherry on the top. It gave us an opportunity to connect with all the athletes. We ran a little community workout. You ran a community workout and got everyone down, and you know, all the spectators and fans and volunteers, gave them a little chance to work out. Loads of little freebies and prizes throughout the day. And just being able to actually see the tests that we spent a lot of time, you know, coming up with, designing, testing. Shout out to all the guys and girls.
The guys who put themselves through the ringer.
Who, you know, voluntarily put themselves through those workouts, gave us loads of data. And that's super important. You know, that data, without those results and those guys testing them, we wouldn't have arrived at the workouts that we had. Our time caps probably would have been wrong. We made lots of adjustments, like small little tweaks to movements, rep schemes, loads, to make sure that we had it right. And we tried to get people of lots of different ability levels testing these, so that we would have a better understanding of, you know, what would the scaled athletes experience, what would the masters athletes experience, and then, you know, what would the RX athletes experience. So I think just from us, something that we really love doing. We want to do this kind of stuff more, you know, and if we can be a part of your events, you know, then 100% reach out to us.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.